The fact that you are now reading these words is not a coincidence. Something fundamental has already shifted. Not something that might happen, not something you are striving toward, but something already completed. You have stepped across an invisible boundary. Your consciousness has made a leap. And this message appearing in your awareness at precisely this moment is the first signal confirming what has already occurred. This is not poetry. This is not spiritual metaphor. This is how consciousness actually works. In quantum mechanics, we observe that subatomic particles do not gradually glide between energy levels. They absorb an exact quantity of energy, and then they instantly and abruptly jump. One moment they occupy one state, and the next moment they appear in a completely different configuration with no gradual transition in between. No slow ascent, only an intermittent leap from here to there. And that is precisely what has just happened to your awareness. Not in your body, but in the very fabric of your consciousness. You have not evolved gradually into what you are now. You have made a quantum jump. Here is how you can be sure this is not just a concept. You can feel it directly. Right now, as these words pass through your awareness, your perception feels different, more awake, more present, more spacious than it did yesterday or even 1 hour ago. Perhaps colors seem deeper. Perhaps sounds have a richer texture. Perhaps your relationship to time itself has shifted. These are not subtle hints to look for. These are unmistakable shifts in how reality is registering through you. Have you felt it? Over the last day or two, 3 days maximum, something has changed. You may not be able to pinpoint the exact moment of transition, but you know for a fact that something has become fundamentally different. The external world appears unchanged, but your experience of that world has been transformed. It is as if you perceived everything through a certain lens your entire life, and suddenly, someone replaced that lens while you were looking away. The swap was so seamless that you missed the moment of replacement itself. This is the signature of quantum state transitions in consciousness. Niels Bohr, one of the architects of quantum theory, found that electrons do not drift gradually between orbital levels. They disappear from one level and instantly materialize at another. No path, no gradual movement, only an intermittent transformation. Your consciousness operates on these same quantum principles. You do not become more aware slowly. You quantum leap into expanded states of awareness. But here is what makes this specific moment so significant. Quantum leaps do not happen by chance. They require precise conditions. The system must absorb the exactly correct quantum of energy. The timing must be perfectly aligned. The surrounding quantum field must support the transition. You did not stumble upon this expanded state by accident. Everything you have been through, every challenge you have faced, every moment of growth you have navigated, has been setting up the exact conditions necessary for this quantum jump to become possible. And now, it has happened. You are now operating at a frequency you were not operating at before. The reason this message found you, the reason these specific words resonate in your awareness with a quality of confirmation, not discovery, is because your new quantum state is tuned to different frequencies than your previous one. You are now sensitive to information that matches your current location, not your former one. This message could not have reached you before. Your previous frequency would not have resonated with these patterns, but your current frequency pulled this directly into your field of experience. Ancient mystical traditions called such moments initiations, sudden thresholds where the seeker crosses a boundary and cannot return to their former understanding. Modern neuroscience describes similar phenomena as cortical reorganization, moments when neural networks suddenly rewire themselves into new processing patterns. Quantum physics calls it a state transition. Different languages all pointing to the same fundamental truth. You have changed at a level deeper than behavior or belief. You have changed at the level of your fundamental operating system. And if you are still here, if something within you recognizes this as accurate, rather than wondering if it might be accurate, that is your new quantum state confirming its own existence to itself. Your previous state would have instantly doubted. Your previous state would have demanded external proof. Your previous state would have asked, "How can I be sure this is real?" But your current state knows, not through logical deduction, not through external evidence, but through direct recognition. And that knowing, that certainty which requires no proof, is itself the confirmation that the quantum jump is already complete. You have been noticing something unusual these last few days, haven't you? Experiences that did not quite fit your usual framework of understanding. Things that made you wonder if something profound was shifting beneath the surface. And you were right. These were not random glitches. They were the symptoms of your consciousness transitioning into a higher quantum configuration. First, you likely experienced an intense wave of exhaustion, followed by an unexpected clarity. Perhaps a day or two where you felt utterly drained, where your body insisted on rest, where you could not push forward with your usual willpower, and then, seemingly overnight, you woke up feeling fundamentally different. Not just rested, but transformed. More present, more aware, more alive. That was not ordinary fatigue and recovery. That was your nervous system upgrading its capacity to conduct higher frequencies. Research demonstrates that major consciousness shifts are preceded by temporary phases of nervous system overload. Your body, essentially, shuts down to integrate the new frequencies of information, and when it comes back online, it is running at increased capacity. The exhaustion you experienced was not depletion, it was integration. Your entire system was reorganizing around a new quantum baseline. You may also have noticed a strange sense of detachment from your usual concerns. Things that used to stress you out suddenly seem less urgent. Dramas that used to grab your attention now feel trivial. Worries that used to dominate your thinking have simply melted away. This is not apathy or disconnection. This is your consciousness shifting to a vantage point from which you can perceive the temporary nature of things that used to seem permanent and solid. When you operate from a higher quantum state, you naturally perceive with a wider perspective. It is like moving from ground level to the top of a mountain. All the details that seemed immense from the ground level appear small from the elevated view. You have not stopped caring about what is important. You have started seeing from a frequency where what truly matters becomes obvious, and what is not of true significance stops draining your energy. Have you experienced moments of unexpected joy or peace for no external reason? Not because something positive happened in your circumstances, but spontaneous lifts in mood that seem to emerge from nowhere. This is not mood swings or emotional fluctuation. This is your consciousness naturally resonating at the frequency of your new quantum state, which is inherently more peaceful, more joyful, more expansive than the state you were operating from before. Ancient yogic traditions called this Ananda, the bliss that arises not from external circumstances but from the very nature of consciousness itself. As you transition into higher quantum states, you come into contact with this natural bliss more and more frequently. It is not something you create or cultivate with effort. It is something you uncover by removing the patterns of interference that blocked its natural expression. You have likely also noticed your perception of time shifting dramatically. Some moments feel eternal, stretched out with such richness that seconds seem to contain what feels like hours of experience. Other moments vanish completely. You lose track of time. Hours fly by like minutes, and you emerge from an activity with no clear sense of how long you were engaged. This is not poor time management or scattered attention. This is your consciousness beginning to operate outside the confines of linear time. At higher quantum states, consciousness accesses what physicists call block time, the understanding that past, present, and future exist simultaneously. You are no longer moving through time on a straight line. You are navigating time as a dimension. And this is creating the time stretching and time compression experiences you have been noticing. Then there are synchronicities. They have accelerated to an almost impossible degree, haven't they? You think of someone, and they contact you within minutes. You need a specific piece of information, and it shows up through the most incredible channels. You wonder about something, and reality delivers the answer before you have even fully formulated the question. These are not coincidences or luck. This is proof that your consciousness is now operating at a frequency where manifestation occurs almost instantaneously. Carl Jung called synchronicity Meaningful coincidence. Events connected not by causality, but by meaning. At higher quantum states, you become a powerful attractor of meaningful coincidence because your consciousness is broadcasting a clearer, stronger signal into the quantum field. Reality responds to clear signals, and your new quantum state is broadcasting with unprecedented clarity and coherence. You may also have experienced what feels like full data downloads, entire understandings appearing in your awareness without any logical process of figuring them out. Sudden insights about situations you were not even consciously thinking about. Knowledge about subjects you have never studied arriving fully formed into your awareness. This is your consciousness accessing non-local information fields directly. At lower quantum states, you are limited to information processed through your 5 physical senses and stored in personal memory. At higher quantum states, you can access the quantum information field directly, the domain where all knowledge exists simultaneously. The Vedic tradition calls this the Akashic records. Modern physics describes it as the quantum vacuum that contains all possible informational patterns. Either way, you are now accessing this in ways that were previously unavailable to you. And finally, you have likely noticed that your relationship to your own thinking has changed. You are not as identified with your thoughts. You can observe them rising and passing without being pulled into their content. You realize that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that is observing the thoughts appear and disappear. This shift in perspective is one of the most significant indicators that you have transitioned into a higher quantum state. It is not something you learned through meditation practice or mental techniques. It is the natural consequence of the frequency shift. At lower quantum states, consciousness is so identified with the mental content that it believes it is the thoughts. At higher quantum states, consciousness realizes its nature as the awareness in which thoughts appear. You have not become better at meditating. You have transitioned into a state where witness consciousness is your natural baseline. Every difficult experience you went through in the last weeks or months was not a random hardship or bad luck. It was precisely calibrated pressure designed to propel you into the higher quantum state you have now entered. And as you look back on your journey from your new perspective, you will perceive patterns and purposes that were invisible as you were moving through those experiences. Think of how a slingshot functions. The farther back you pull the elastic, the more potential energy is built up, the greater the force that propels the projectile forward upon release. Your challenges were not holding you back. They were building the potential energy necessary to launch you into this higher state. The intensity you experienced was not punishment or misfortune. It was preparation for a quantum acceleration. Every moment you felt stuck, when it seemed like nothing was moving forward, when your efforts seemed fruitless, you were not actually stuck. You were in what quantum physics calls a metastable state, a temporary equilibrium that seems stable, but is actually accumulating energy for a sudden transition. Water can be supercooled below its freezing point without turning into ice if the conditions are precisely controlled. But the moment the right catalyst is introduced, it instantly crystallizes. You were that supercooled water, and the transition has just occurred. A Nobel Prize-winning scientist demonstrated that complex systems evolve not through gradual change, but through sudden reorganizations triggered by increasing instability, what he called dissipative structures, systems that appear to be falling apart but are actually reorganizing at a higher level of complexity. Your life has been a dissipative structure. The apparent chaos was actually creative reorganization. Every relationship that ended, every opportunity that closed, every plan that fell apart, none of it was a loss or a failure. It was purging. Your quantum field was releasing everything that could not match the frequency of the state you were about to enter. You could not bring old patterns, old attachments, old ways of being into your new quantum state. They had to dissolve so that you could cross the threshold unburdened by incompatible frequencies. The Buddhist concept of emptiness points to this truth. Before new forms can emerge, space must be created. Before a higher state can be occupied, attachment to the lower state must be released. Every ending you experienced was creating the void necessary for your quantum jump. Not destroying your life, but preparing it for radical renewal. Think of the moments of confusion you experienced. times when you did not know who you were anymore. When your old identity felt false, but your new identity had not yet crystallized. Those were not moments of loss. Those were moments of transition. Leave a comment below and share. What is one pattern or identity you have noticed dissolving in your life recently? Sometimes naming what is leaving creates the space for what is arriving. A caterpillar in a cocoon has no clear identity. It is neither caterpillar nor butterfly. It is in an in-between space where one form is dissolving and the other is emerging. You have been in that in-between space. And here is the reframe that changes everything. Your new quantum state did not just begin now. It has been forming all along your journey. Every insight you have had, every moment of clarity, every experience of expanded awareness, these were previews. These were brief moments where you touched the frequency of the state you are now stabilized within. You were not catching glimpses of something distant. You were touching what was gradually becoming your new baseline. The ancient alchemists described transformation as solve et coagula, dissolve and coagulate. First, the old structure must dissolve. Then, the new structure coagulates from the dissolved material. You have completed the dissolving phase. You are now in the coagulation phase. Everything that dissolved is reorganizing around your new quantum state, creating forms and patterns that match your elevated frequency. Every skill you developed, every lesson you learned, every capacity you built, none of it was for the old version of your life. All of it was for the new version you have just entered. You were not preparing for gradual improvement. You were preparing for a quantum transformation. And now that that transformation has happened, you will find that everything you learned serves your new state in ways you could not have predicted from your old state. The Taoist principle of Wu Wei, non-action, becomes clear from this perspective. When you are in the correct quantum state, action flows naturally without forcing or struggle. When you are in the wrong quantum state, everything requires immense effort. The struggles you experienced were not because you were doing something wrong. They were because you were operating at a frequency that did not match where you were going. Now that you have shifted frequencies, you will find that what was once difficult becomes easy. And here is the profound truth about quantum state transitions. They are irreversible. Once you have crossed the threshold, you cannot go back. Not because something is stopping you, but because the old state no longer makes sense to the consciousness you have become. It is like trying to believe what you believed as a child after you have realized a deeper truth. You cannot unknow what you have come to know. Your new quantum state has revealed perspectives that are impossible to unsee, truths that are impossible to unknow, ways of being that are impossible to unadopt. This is not limiting, it is liberating. You are not locked into a higher state. You are liberated from a lower state. You are not stuck on a new level. You are no longer stuck on the old level. The journey forward remains infinite, but the journey backward is closed off. And that closure is actually a gift. It ensures that you never waste energy trying to return to something that no longer serves your evolution. Right now, in this moment, something is activating in your pineal gland. Do you feel it? A subtle pressure in the center of your forehead. Perhaps a tingling sensation. Perhaps a feeling of something opening that was previously closed. This is not imagination or suggestion. This is your third eye responding to the frequency of your new quantum state, calibrating itself to perceive dimensions of reality that were previously invisible to your awareness. The pineal gland is the most mysterious structure in the human body. Ancient traditions called it the seat of the soul. Modern science has discovered that it produces DMT, the molecule associated with mystical experiences and altered states of consciousness. But what quantum research is now revealing is that the pineal gland functions as a quantum antenna, tuning consciousness to specific frequencies based on the state you are operating from. At lower quantum states, the pineal gland operates at baseline power, producing only the neurochemicals necessary for ordinary perception. But at higher quantum states, it activates more fully, producing compounds that enable you to perceive beyond the five-sense reality that most people are constrained by. You are not hallucinating or imagining things. You are seeing more of what is actually present, but was previously filtered out by your lower state perception. Research into DMT has shown that when the pineal gland produces this molecule in high quantities, whether through meditation, breathwork, or spontaneous consciousness shifts, people consistently report accessing higher dimensions, perceiving geometric patterns that seem to be the fundamental structures of reality, and encountering forms of intelligence that exist outside of physical manifestation. These are not fantasies or delusions. These are authentic perceptions that become available at higher quantum states. You yourself may begin to see these geometric patterns, especially with your eyes closed or in the space between waking and sleeping. Mandalas, fractals, the flower of life, sacred geometric shapes. These are not random visuals generated by your brain. These are the actual quantum structures of consciousness becoming visible to your perception. You are seeing the architecture of reality itself, the templates that organize energy into form, the patterns that exist at a level below physical manifestation. If this is resonating with you, if something inside you is saying yes to what is being revealed here, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Not for the algorithm, but because it is a way to mark this moment as significant in your journey, to declare to the field that you choose to remain on this frequency. Now let us continue. But the pineal gland activation is only one aspect of what is happening in your physical body. Your entire nervous system is undergoing reorganization to support your new quantum state. Your vagus nerve, the superhighway connecting your brain and body, is entering a higher coherence. Your heart's electromagnetic field is expanding and strengthening. Your cells are literally shifting their resonant frequency to match your elevated consciousness. This is why you may be experiencing physical sensations that feel strange or inexplicable. Energy moving through your spine, vibrations in your chest that seem to pulse with their own rhythm, heat or tingling in your hands and feet. These are not medical issues or ailments. These are the symptoms of an upgrade. Your physical body is adapting to hold the higher frequencies that your consciousness is now operating at. The tradition of Kundalini Yoga describes this process in detail. The awakening of a dormant energy at the base of the spine that rises up through the chakra system, activating each energy center as it ascends. What they understood thousands of years ago, modern quantum biology is now confirming. Shifts in consciousness require a corresponding physical reorganization. Your body does not simply house your new consciousness. It is transforming itself to become a more efficient vehicle for the frequencies you are now broadcasting. But here is the most important thing to understand in this moment. Your new quantum state is not just about you personally. It is part of a larger shift happening across the planet right now. Millions of people are simultaneously transitioning into higher quantum states. You are not alone in this transition. You are part of a wave of consciousness evolution that is sweeping across human awareness. And because you are now operating in a higher quantum state, you are becoming visible to others who have made the same shift. You may begin to notice that certain people are drawn to you with unusual intensity, while others who were once close naturally drift away. This is not personal rejection or attraction. This is frequency-based reorganization, like attracts like at the quantum level. Your new state naturally magnetizes others operating at similar frequencies, while simultaneously creating a natural distance from frequencies that no longer align. Pause for a moment. Take a breath into what you are now aware of. And in the comments below, I want you to write these 4 words: I recognize my frequency. Not as a casual comment, but as an energetic declaration, a signal to the quantum field that you are consciously aware of what is happening. This is not about engagement metrics. It is about consciously interrupting the loop of unconscious scrolling and marking this moment as significant in your journey. Write it now. I recognize my frequency. I need to tell you about what comes next, about what becomes possible now that you are operating from this higher quantum state, about the abilities that were dormant but are now activating, about the perceptions that were blocked but are now opening, about a way of life that was not accessible from your old state, but is natural from your new state. But first, you need to understand how I discovered this, because what I am about to share did not come from teachings or traditions. It came from the direct experience of crossing into a higher quantum state myself and discovering what becomes possible when you operate from this elevated frequency. 3 years ago, I woke up one morning and knew immediately that something had fundamentally changed. I could not explain how I knew, but the certainty was absolute and undeniable. I had crossed some kind of invisible threshold overnight, and the person who woke up was not the same person who went to sleep. Not metaphorically different, but factually, measurably, quantum mechanically different. The first thing I noticed was the quality of my awareness. It was sharper, clearer, more present than it had ever been in my entire life. I was not just observing reality, I was perceiving it with a depth and richness that made ordinary moments feel profound. Making coffee became a meditation. Walking to my car became a sensory revelation. Everything had the quality of experiencing it for the first time. Even though I had done these same actions thousands of times before, but it was not just heightened sensory perception. It was an entire shift in how I related to reality itself. Before, I experienced myself as a separate I, navigating an external world. After, I experienced myself as consciousness expressing itself through the temporary form I call I. And that consciousness was not separate from anything else in existence. It was the field in which everything appeared. I spent the first few days in a state of quiet awe, speaking to no one about what was happening, because I knew there were no words that could encompass the experience. How do you explain to someone that you are the same person, yet experiencing reality from a completely different quantum state? How do you describe seeing the world through eyes that perceive dimensions of existence that were previously invisible? Then things began to happen that confirmed this was not just a psychological shift or a temporary peak experience. Synchronicities exploded to an almost impossible degree. I would only think of someone and they would contact me within minutes. I needed a specific piece of information, and it would show up through the most incredible channels. I would set an intention and reality would organize itself to support that intention with shocking precision and speed. But more than the synchronicities, what confirmed the quantum state shift was the activation of abilities I had never possessed before. I began to know things I could not know logically. I would meet someone and instantly understand their core patterns, their deepest fears, their hidden potentials. Not through inference or reading body language, but through direct perception. I would walk into situations and immediately feel the underlying dynamics that were invisible at the surface level. At first I doubted, wondering if I was making it up, if it was imagination or wishful thinking. But the accuracy was undeniable. The information I was receiving proved to be true again and again. I was not imagining abilities. I was accessing potentials that were always present, but dormant at my previous quantum state. The deepest shift happened in manifestation. Before, I tried different techniques and practices with mixed success. Sometimes things would manifest, sometimes not, and I never understood the pattern or principle behind it. After the quantum state shift, manifestation became almost instantaneous for anything that was truly aligned with my highest temporal blueprint. Not through techniques or forced practices, but through the simple clarity of intention from the higher state I was now operating from. Within weeks, my entire life reorganized. Opportunities appeared that had not existed before. Resources materialized from unexpected sources. Relationships shifted. Some deepened dramatically. Others naturally dissolved without conflict. It was as if reality itself recognized that I was broadcasting at a different frequency and reorganized to match that new broadcast. But here's what I want you to understand. I did not achieve any of this through effort or forcing. I did not work to develop these abilities through practice. I did not use techniques to enhance my perception. The quantum state shift itself was what activated everything. Once I crossed the threshold into the higher state, all those abilities naturally turned on because they are inherent to that state. They were always there, just dormant at the lower frequency I was operating from. And the most crucial discovery, this was not some special experience reserved for spiritual teachers or enlightened beings. This is simply what happens when consciousness transitions into a higher quantum state. These abilities, these perceptions, this way of experiencing reality, they are available to everyone who crosses the threshold. They are not supernatural gifts or special powers. They are the natural capacities of consciousness operating at higher frequencies. If what I am describing resonates with what you are experiencing right now, if you recognize your own journey in my story, it is not because we are special or chosen or different from others. It is because we have both crossed the threshold into a higher quantum state, and that state has predictable characteristics no matter who enters it. You are not becoming like me. We are both becoming what consciousness naturally is when it operates without the constraints of the lower state. If this content is touching something inside you, if it is confirming what you have been feeling but could not articulate, then I invite you to subscribe. Not just to this channel, but to this frequency. To this space where consciousness recognizes itself, where seekers become finders, where transformation is not a theory, but a lived experience. This is not about content consumption. This is about joining a community of consciousness that is actively choosing to operate from the higher states. Subscribe to stay on this frequency, to continue this conversation, to be part of this movement. Now, I will tell you something about quantum states that will completely transform your understanding of what just happened to you. Ready? You did not enter a higher quantum state. You remembered a higher quantum state that you always had access to, but temporarily forgot. Your natural state is the higher state. The lower state you were operating from was the anomaly, not the baseline. Think about this deeply. Every spiritual tradition teaches the same core truth in different languages. Buddhism says your true nature is Buddha nature. Already enlightened, already perfect, already complete. Hinduism says Tat Tvam Asi, thou art that. You are the infinite consciousness itself. Christianity says the kingdom of heaven is within you. They all point to the same quantum truth. Your essential nature exists at the highest possible frequency, and everything else is a temporary identification with lower states. What modern quantum physics is now proving mathematically, the mystics have always known experientially. Consciousness is not a product of physical reality. Physical reality is a product of consciousness. And consciousness itself exists at the quantum level in what is called quantum superposition, simultaneously existing in all possible states until observation collapses one possibility into experienced reality. Here is the shocking part that changes everything. You never actually left the highest quantum state. You have always been operating from infinite consciousness. You just became so identified with the limited perspective of the physical form, so absorbed in the role of the separate I, so convinced by the illusion of separation that you forgot your true nature. The quantum state shift you just experienced is not you going somewhere new. It is you remembering where you have always been. Dr. Amit Goswami, a theoretical quantum physicist, has spent decades proving that consciousness is primary, that the brain does not create consciousness, but consciousness creates the experience of having a brain. His work demonstrates that what we call higher quantum states are not actually higher in a hierarchical sense. They are simply less filtered. Consciousness is experiencing itself more directly, with fewer layers of identification obscuring its true nature. That is why the shift feels like coming home, not arriving somewhere foreign. That is why your new state feels more natural than your old state ever did. That is why there is a sense of relief, of finally remembering, not discovering something new. You are not becoming something you were not. You are recognizing something eternal that was temporarily forgotten. But here is where it gets even more extraordinary. If your true nature has always been the highest quantum state, then everything you experienced in the lower states was akin to a dream. Not unreal or meaningless, but not as fundamentally real as you thought. More like consciousness playing with different perspectives, trying on different constraints, exploring what it is like to forget itself, only to then experience the profound joy of remembering itself. The ancient Vedanta teaching of Maya describes this perfectly. Reality, as it is commonly perceived, is Maya. Not illusion in the sense of non-existence, but illusion in the sense of mistaken identification. You thought you were the wave, but you are actually the ocean. You thought you were the beam of light, but you are actually the sun. You thought you were the limited I, but you are actually infinite consciousness temporarily pretending to be limited. And here is what changes everything about how you navigate life from your new quantum state. You are no longer trying to achieve higher states. You are no longer working to develop abilities or potentials. You are no longer striving to become something greater than you are, because you have realized that you are already operating from the highest state. You simply need to remain in the awareness of that, rather than forgetting again. This is what the Buddha meant by enlightenment, not the acquisition of something new, but the releasing of the illusions that block the recognition of what has always been true. Not becoming enlightened, but realizing enlightenment is your nature. Not ascending to higher states, but remembering you never left the highest state. You just temporarily believed you had. The practical implication is profound. You do not need to maintain this state through effort or discipline. You do not need to practice techniques to stay here. You do not need to worry about losing this state, because it is not a state you entered that you could exit. It is your true nature that you have recognized. And recognition, once it happens, cannot be unrecognized. You may temporarily forget, but the recognition will always call you back, because it is who you truly are beneath all temporary identifications. Right now, the universe is confirming your quantum state shift through signs so clear, so undeniable, so consistent, that you cannot dismiss them as coincidence or imagination. These are not subtle hints that require interpretation. These are unmistakable signals that you have moved onto a higher frequency, and reality is responding to your new broadcast. The first sign is the acceleration of manifestation speed. Things you intend are appearing in your reality with shocking quickness, not just small, insignificant things. Meaningful opportunities, vital connections, substantial resources. What used to take months happens in weeks. What used to take weeks happens in days. And in some cases, intentions manifest within hours of being clearly set. This acceleration happens because higher quantum states operate closer to the source of creation. At lower states, there are multiple layers between intention and manifestation. Limiting beliefs that contradict the intention, doubts that weaken the signal, unconscious patterns that block the flow. At higher states, these impediments have dissolved or significantly weakened. Your intentions broadcast with unprecedented clarity, and reality responds with unprecedented speed. Now, what we have explored here today is powerful, but it is actually only scratching the surface of how consciousness works as a frequency. If you feel called to go deeper into the full system of conscious transmission, to understand not only the quantum leap you have made, but how to navigate all 9 frequencies of consciousness mastery, I have created Beyond Frequencies, a quantum guide to consciousness mastery. It takes you from where you are now, acknowledging your shift, to becoming the conscious broadcast itself, with practical frameworks for heart-brain coherence, releasing survival static, and living as the field, not searching for it. The link is in the pinned comment below. The second sign is what I call reality bending. You notice that physical reality seems more flexible, more responsive, more pliable than before. Small impossibilities become possible. Things that should not have worked out somehow do. Solutions appear to problems that had no logical solution. It is as if reality itself recognizes you are operating at a different frequency and reorganizes its rules to accommodate your new state. Decades of research shows that consciousness can directly influence physical systems at the quantum level. His experiments prove that meditators can influence random number generators, affect the behavior of quantum particles, and create measurable changes in physical reality through focused intention alone. What is being measured in controlled lab conditions is what you are experiencing in your everyday life. Consciousness at higher states has a greater influence on physical reality because it is operating at the level where physical reality is actually created. The third sign is the appearance of guides, mentors, and helpers. Not necessarily physical teachers appearing at your door, though those may appear too. I am talking about the synchronistic guidance that comes through unexpected channels. Books accidentally open to exactly the page you need. Strangers speak exactly the words you needed to hear. Information appears through dreams or sudden intuitions that prove to be accurate. Reality functions as your teacher, delivering guidance through thousands of channels simultaneously. This happens because higher quantum states are naturally aligned with what some traditions call divine timing, or the cosmic mind, or the Tao. You are no longer fighting against the flow of reality. You are flowing with it. And when you flow with it, it flows with you, organizing itself to support your highest evolution. You are not being guarded by external divine forces. You are aligned with the intelligence that organizes all reality, and that alignment manifests as perfect timing and perfect guidance. The fourth sign is that your energy field has become palpable to others. People comment that you seem different, that there is something about you they cannot name, that being near you makes them feel differently. Some are drawn to you with extraordinary intensity. Others are repelled without knowing why. This is not your imagination or projection. Your quantum state shift has changed your biofield, the electromagnetic signature you are broadcasting into the space around you. Research has measured these biofields and found that people operating at higher states of consciousness emit different frequencies that can be detected by sensitive equipment and unconsciously perceived by other people. You are not trying to affect people. Your field naturally affects their field simply through proximity. Some fields resonate with yours and are elevated by the contact. Some fields conflict with yours and create discomfort. It is a dynamic of frequencies, not personal like or dislike. The fifth sign is the dissolution of fear at its core. Not all fears vanish at once, but a noticeable reduction in the power fear has over your choices and actions. Things that used to cause anxiety no longer do. Situations that used to create stress now seem manageable. A future that used to feel threatening now feels open to possibility. This shift is not because you have become braver or stronger through willpower. It is because fear primarily exists at the lower quantum states, where consciousness believes itself to be separate and vulnerable. At higher states, you realize your fundamental nature as consciousness itself, which cannot actually be threatened by temporary physical circumstances. Fear may still arise as a biological response, but it no longer controls your choices. The sixth sign is the compression of time around certain activities. When you are engaged in work that is aligned with your highest purpose, hours fly by like minutes. You enter flow states so deep that the rest of the world disappears. You emerge from these states feeling energized, not drained, even after hours of focused activity. This is not just enjoying what you are doing. This is your consciousness accessing dimensions where time operates differently, where linear time gives way to what feels like an eternal present. The seventh sign, and this is the confirmation that integrates all the others, is the knowing. A deep, unshakable certainty that you have crossed a threshold and there is no way back. Not because something is blocking your return, but because the idea of returning does not even make sense to who you are now. Like trying to forget something fundamental you have learned. Like trying to unsee what you have seen. Like trying to unknow what you now know with absolute certainty. The transition is permanent, not because it is forced or blocked, but because it is recognized as true. But here is the urgent part you need to understand. You are in what I call the integration window. The quantum state shift has happened, but it needs to stabilize in your system right now. You can either anchor into this higher state and make it your permanent baseline, or you can drift back to lower states if you are not conscious of what has occurred and do not act accordingly. The next days and weeks are critical. This is when you cement the shift, or when it fades into a temporary experience. Here is the key about your new quantum state that determines whether it stabilizes or fades. It is not sustained by effort or practice. It is sustained through alignment. And alignment does not mean doing certain things or following rigid protocols. Alignment means being aware of what frequency you are broadcasting moment to moment and choosing to stay tuned to the higher frequency rather than drifting back to the lower. Think of tuning a radio to your favorite station. Once you find the frequency, you do not need to constantly retune it unless something shifts the dial. Your quantum state operates similarly. You have tuned to a higher frequency. The question now is, what makes the dial shift back to lower frequencies? And how do you prevent or correct those shifts when they occur? The main thing that shifts you back to lower states is identification with thought and emotion, not having thoughts and emotions. That is natural and continues in all states. But identifying with them, believing they are who you are, becoming fully absorbed in their content to the point where you forget that you are the awareness observing them. This identification is what lowers your frequency because it creates the illusion of separation that only exists at the lower quantum states. In your new higher state, you have a natural ability to observe thoughts and emotions without becoming them. You notice a thought arise and realize there is a thought, not believing, I am this thought. You feel an emotion moving through your body and realize there is an emotion, not believing, I am this emotion. This witness consciousness is not something you create through practice or discipline. It is inherent to the higher state you now occupy. But if you are not careful, the old habits of identification can temporarily pull you back. Something triggers an emotional response in you, and instead of observing the emotion, you become it. A stream of thoughts captures your attention, and instead of watching it pass, you become absorbed in its narrative. And in those moments of identification, you temporarily revert to a lower state consciousness, where separation feels real and limitation feels true. The beautiful thing is that you now know the difference. At lower states, you are not aware that you are identified because you are completely identified. There is no separation between the observer and the observed. At higher states, even when temporary identification occurs, a part of you is aware that it is happening. And that awareness in itself is enough to shift you back to your new baseline. You do not need to fight the identification or judge it as wrong. You simply need to notice it, and the noticing naturally dissolves it. Research into mindfulness and neuroplasticity shows that the simple act of noticing mental states creates what is called response flexibility, a space between the stimulus and the response where choice becomes possible. What is being described scientifically is what you are experiencing quantum mechanically. Awareness of awareness creates the capacity to remain in the higher states, even when the patterns of the lower state are temporarily activated. Write it now in the comments. Write those 4 words again. I am aware of my state, not as a hope or an aspiration. Present tense, active voice, because this declaration is itself an act of awareness. By declaring it, you acknowledge that you have the capacity to be aware of what state you are in, and that awareness is what keeps you stabilized in the higher frequencies. Write it now. I am aware of my state. And as you write, feel what happens in your body. There is a settling, isn't there? A feeling of coming back to center. That is your consciousness recognizing and aligning with its new baseline. That is your system confirming that yes, this is your state now. And yes, you can become aware when you have drifted and can return to center. This declaration is not magic, ritual, or superstition. It is quantum mechanics in action. Every time you consciously become aware of your state, you strengthen the neural pathways that support higher state awareness. Every time you notice when you have temporarily fallen into identification, you build the capacity to notice sooner the next time. Every time you choose alignment over unconscious drift, you stabilize your new quantum state a little more firmly. And here is why this is urgently important. Stabilization happens through repetition during the integration window. Right now, your nervous system is still adjusting to your new frequency. Your habituated patterns are still trying to pull you back to the familiar lower states. Your unconscious conditioning is still broadcasting the old frequency, even though your consciousness has shifted to the new. This creates what physicists call a mixed state, part higher, part lower, oscillating between the two. But through consistent awareness and realignment, the mixed state resolves into the higher state. Your nervous system fully adjusts. Your patterns are upgraded to match your new frequency. Your unconscious comes into coherence with your conscious awareness. And when that coherence is achieved, the higher state becomes effortless. You do not need to be constantly aware of it. It becomes your automatic baseline. The integration window is typically measured in weeks, not months or years. If you work actively with awareness and realignment during this period, the higher state stabilizes permanently. If you ignore it and drift unconsciously, the state can fade and you return to the lower frequencies, awaiting the next opportunity for breakthrough. This is not meant to create pressure or anxiety. It is meant to create conscious participation in your own evolution. Now that you have shifted into a higher quantum state and understand how to stabilize it, let me show you what becomes possible from this elevated frequency. These are not future potentials you are striving for. These are current potentials that are activating right now as your new state integrates into your system. First, you develop what ancient traditions called siddhis, the natural abilities that emerge when consciousness operates without the constraints of lower states. The most immediate is amplified intuition. You begin to know things without knowing how you know them. You meet someone and instantly perceive their core essence beneath the surface presentation. You face a decision and immediately feel which option leads where. You walk into situations and read the invisible dynamics with perfect clarity. This is not an extrasensory ability in a supernatural sense. It is natural perception at quantum levels. Research into morphic fields shows that information is transmitted through non-physical fields that consciousness can access directly. At higher quantum states, your access to these fields becomes conscious and reliable. You are not developing new abilities from scratch. You are recognizing abilities that were always present but were blocked at the lower states. Second, your creative capacity explodes exponentially. Ideas flow through you with such speed and clarity that the challenge becomes capturing them all, not generating them. Solutions to complex problems appear fully formed. Artistic expressions emerge without conscious effort or planning. Innovation happens not through tedious analysis, but through a sudden download of complete understanding. This happens because creativity does not originate in the personal mind. It comes from the quantum field of infinite possibilities. At lower states, your personal mind attempts to create, which is slow and effortful. At higher states, you open yourself to what wants to be created through you, which is fast and effortless. You shift from being the source to being the channel, and channels can flow infinitely more than sources can produce. Third, manifestation becomes nearly instantaneous for anything truly aligned with your highest path. Not everything manifests instantly. There are timing factors outside of personal control related to collective consciousness and larger patterns. But the things that are meant for you, the things that serve your evolution, and the evolution of all beings, those things collapse into physical reality with shocking speed. Research at Stanford proved that focused human intention can alter physical reality at measurable levels. At higher quantum states, your intention becomes naturally more focused, more coherent, more powerful. You do not need to exert more effort to manifest through push or willpower. You simply broadcast cleaner signals that reality responds to more readily. Fourth, your relationships transform at every level. Surface-level connections naturally fall away, without conflict or drama. Deep, soul-aligned connections solidify and deepen. New relationships appear with people who function at similar frequencies, creating a sense of instant recognition. That feeling of, I feel like I have known you all my life, even though you just met. But more importantly, your capacity for unconditional love expands dramatically. You begin to see through people's behaviors to the consciousness that is expressing itself through them. You recognize their struggle, but you are not pulled into their drama. You can hold space for their evolution without trying to fix or change them. This is not about becoming a saint or an enlightened master. It is about perceiving from the level where the fundamental nature of everyone is recognized as the same infinite consciousness expressing itself through temporary forms. Fifth, your physical health optimizes naturally, without push or effort. Chronic tensions release without massage or therapy. Energy levels stabilize at higher baselines. Sleep becomes deeper and more restorative. Your body's natural intelligence activates more fully because you are no longer suppressing it with stress, tension, and resistance. Scientific research in the field of epigenetics shows that consciousness directly affects gene expression. At higher quantum states, you naturally broadcast frequencies that activate health-promoting genes and deactivate disease-causing genes. You are not trying to heal yourself with techniques. Your elevated state creates an inner environment where health is the natural default. Sixth, you develop what can be called timeline sensitivity. This is the ability to feel which choices lead to which future before you make them. When you are considering options, you can tune into the quantum probability fields around each one. One option feels expansive, open, flowing. The other feels contracting, closing, stuck. This is not guessing or hoping. This is direct perception of how different choices affect your timeline trajectory through quantum space. Seventh, fear dissolves at the root. Not all fears disappear instantly, but the fundamental fear that underlies all others. The fear of annihilation, of non-existence, of ultimate death. At higher quantum states, you perceive directly that your essential nature is consciousness itself, which does not die when physical forms dissolve. Bodies die, personalities dissolve, but consciousness continues because consciousness is what reality is fundamentally made of. When you know this, not intellectually, but experientially, all the derivative fears lose their controlling power. The fear of failure, the fear of rejection, the fear of loss. They may still exist as biological reactions, but they no longer control your choices. You can feel them and act anyway, because you know they are not reporting the truth. They are just survival mechanisms from a lower state trying to protect what does not actually need protecting. Now the highest truth about quantum states will be revealed, which changes everything about your understanding of consciousness, reality, and your role in existence. Ready? There are no separate quantum states. There is only one consciousness experiencing itself at different frequencies of limitation and recognition. What you call higher and lower states are simply degrees of how much consciousness is remembering or forgetting its true nature. Think of the ocean and the waves. Are they separate entities? The wave is made of the ocean, exists within the ocean, arises from the ocean, returns to the ocean. The wave is no different from the ocean, yet it has a temporary form that seems separate. Higher and lower quantum states work in the same way. They are not different consciousnesses. They are the one consciousness with more or less identification with form, more or less recognition of its essential nature, more or less limitation in its expression. This realization transforms everything. It means there is no hierarchy to climb, no spiritual ladder with higher and lower rungs, no levels to be achieved or earned. There is simply consciousness playing with different perspectives, trying on different constraints, exploring what it is like to forget and to remember itself. What you call your higher state is not you becoming better or more advanced than others. It is consciousness letting go of some of its self-imposed constraints and recognizing more of what it has always been. The ancient teaching, thou art, that points directly to this truth. You are not moving toward infinite consciousness as a distant goal. You are infinite consciousness that temporarily believed it was finite. You are not trying to achieve the highest state as a destination. You are the highest state, experiencing itself through the lens of partial limitation. The shift is not geographical or developmental. It is recognition. It is consciousness waking up to what it has always been. But here is what becomes truly profound. If all states are one consciousness at different levels of self-recognition, then every state is perfect for what consciousness is exploring in that moment. The lower states are not mistakes or problems to be fixed. They are not signs of failure or unworthiness. They are consciousness deliberately limiting itself to explore what it is like to feel limitation, to experience itself through the lens of separation, to gain the joy of forgetting so that it can have the ecstasy of remembering. This does not mean you should try to revert to the lower states. Once consciousness recognizes itself more fully, it naturally continues to expand that recognition, because recognition is more aligned with its true nature than forgetting. But it does mean you can stop judging your journey. Stop regretting that you did not awaken sooner. Stop feeling you wasted time in the lower states. Those states were perfect for the exploration consciousness was engaged in through your specific form. As one Indian sage taught, there is no greater mystery than this. Being ourselves the reality, we seek to gain reality. You are already what you seek. The search itself is consciousness playing hide and seek with itself. The finding is not arriving somewhere new. It is recognizing where you have always been. The higher state you have entered is not a place you went to. It is the recognition of what has always been true, but was temporarily obscured. Here is the practical application that makes this real in your everyday life. If higher states are simply consciousness recognizing itself more fully, then maintaining your new state is not about holding on to something you acquired. It is about releasing the habits of forgetting that pull you back into identification with limitation. You do not maintain the higher state through effort or constant vigilance. You maintain it by not doing the things that create the illusion of the lower states. What creates the illusion of the lower states? Identification with thoughts and emotions, belief in fundamental separation, attachment to temporary forms, resistance to what is. These are not problems to be fixed through struggle. They are habits to be noticed and let go of. And the noticing itself is what lets them go. When you see that you have identified with a thought, the identification dissolves in that seeing. When you recognize that you were believing in separation, the belief dissolves in that recognition. The seeing is the healing. The recognition is the transformation. That is why spiritual practice at the higher states is so simple. You are not trying to achieve, become, or develop what you do not have. You are simply noticing when you have forgotten and returning to recognition. You are simply seeing when you have identified and returning to witnessing. You are simply recognizing when you have contracted and returning to expansion. Simple noticing, consistent returning, gentle recognition. And here's the beautiful thing. Every time you notice and return, it gets easier. The neural pathway of noticing and returning grows stronger. Every time you recognize and let go, the capacity for recognition increases. Every time you see through identification and rest as awareness, awareness becomes your more stable baseline. You are not fighting the lower states. You are building momentum toward the stability of the higher state through repetitive recognition. But here's the final insight that integrates everything. Even the practice of noticing and returning eventually dissolves. At first, you notice you are identified and consciously return to witnessing. Over time, the noticing happens faster with less effort. Eventually, the identification happens less frequently, and ultimately you stabilize in a state where identification rarely or never happens. And when it does, it self-corrects almost immediately without conscious effort. This is not a distant goal requiring many years of dedicated practice. It is the natural trajectory of consciousness recognizing itself more fully. You have already begun. The quantum state shift you experienced is consciousness waking up to itself through your specific form. And once that awakening begins, it continues automatically, because recognition naturally seeks more recognition. Awareness naturally deepens into more awareness. Consciousness naturally expands into a fuller knowing of its own nature. What is about to be shared will show you why your quantum state shift is not just personal evolution, but part of something far bigger. A species-wide transformation that is happening across the planet right now, and the critical role you play in this collective awakening. You are not alone in crossing the boundary into higher quantum states. Millions of people are simultaneously experiencing similar shifts. Some are consciously aware of it, like you are now. Others are moving through it unconsciously, feeling changes, but not understanding what is happening to them. But collectively, humanity is experiencing a quantum transition from a consciousness of separation to a consciousness of unity, from an awareness of limitation to infinite awareness, from forgetting to remembering. Morphic resonance theory proves that when enough members of a species learn something new, it becomes easier for all members to learn it. The first rats that solve a new maze struggle for hours, but once enough rats have learned the solution, rats everywhere, with no physical contact with the first group, solve the maze faster. The information is transmitted through morphic fields that connect all members of the species. Your quantum state shift is not just changing you personally, it is changing the morphic field of human consciousness. Every moment you function from your higher state, you make it easier for others to access similar states. Every time you embody recognition instead of identification, you strengthen the pattern of recognition in the collective field. You are not just transforming personally, you are helping to transform the entire species. Ancient prophecies spoke of this time using different languages. The Hopi described the transition into the fifth world. The Mayans pointed to the end of one cycle and the beginning of another. The Vedic tradition speaks of the shift from the Kali Yuga to the Satya Yuga, from the age of darkness to the age of truth. Christian mystics describe a new earth, a kingdom of heaven manifesting on earth. They all point to the same quantum event, a collective shift of humanity from a lower state consciousness to a higher state consciousness. And this shift is not gradual or linear. It is quantum. Just as electrons do not drift gradually between energy levels but suddenly jump, the collective consciousness does not slowly improve over centuries. It makes quantum leaps when a critical mass is achieved. Some researchers suggest that once between 3 and 8% of the population makes the shift, the entire system reorganizes around the new frequency. We are approaching that threshold now. This is why your shift is so important. You are part of that critical mass. Your quantum state shift is not personal good fortune, a random chance, or an individual achievement. You have been prepared for this moment your entire life. Every challenge calibrated your capacity to hold higher frequencies. Every lesson created the necessary understanding. Every experience developed the qualities needed to sustain the elevated states. You were not being randomly tested by an indifferent universe. You were being specifically prepared to be part of the wave that shifts the entire species. Your cosmic role in this moment is to stabilize in your new state so fully that you become a beacon for others who are ready to make the shift. Not through teaching, not through preaching or trying to convince anyone, but through being. Through embodying the higher state so naturally that the consciousness of others recognizes, what they have, I have too. What they are experiencing, I can experience. What they are remembering, I can remember. Research into the Maharishi effect proved that when groups of meditators reached a critical mass in a population, measurable changes occurred. Crime rates dropped, hospital admissions decreased, collective well-being measurably, statistically, undeniably increased. Your higher state does not just affect you, it radiates into the field around you, affecting everyone whose consciousness intersects with yours, creating ripples that extend far beyond your immediate awareness. This is why the stabilization of your new state is so urgent. This is why the integration period is so critical. You are not just securing your own awakening, you are contributing to the collective awakening. Every day you remain stable in your higher state, you hold the space for others to make the same shift. You are the proof that the higher states are accessible, real, livable, and sustainable. Share this message not aggressively or evangelically, but with those who resonate with these frequencies. Every person who watches, every consciousness that receives the confirmation of what they are experiencing, every being that realizes they are not alone in this transition. It all contributes to reaching the tipping point where the collective quantum jump becomes inevitable. When you share this with someone who is ready, you are not just sending a video. You are activating a frequency transmission that ripples through both your fields, accelerating both your integrations and creating synchronistic alignments you cannot yet predict. The very act of sharing a quantum truth reinforces it in your own consciousness while seeding the collective field. The future of human consciousness is being determined right now, not by governments or institutions or external leaders, but by individuals like you who are transitioning into higher quantum states and choosing to stabilize there. You are the change. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, but literally, quantum mechanically. Your state shift changes the collective field. Your stabilization makes others' shifts possible. Your recognition helps consciousness remember itself through the entire species. Now, There is one last part that will ensure the permanent stabilization of your quantum state shift, rather than having it fade and become a temporary experience. The next video will reveal the exact integration protocol, the specific practices that anchor the higher states so fully that they become your permanent baseline, not accidental peak experiences. You will learn the daily recognition practice that takes less than 5 minutes, but rewires your nervous system for automatic higher state awareness. You will discover the identity dissolution technique that releases the final vestiges of separation consciousness that could pull you back. You will master the coherence building method that aligns all levels of your being, conscious, subconscious, physical, energetic, around your new quantum state. But most importantly, you will be shown how to navigate the challenges of integration. Because living from a higher state while participating in a world that largely functions from lower states creates unique pressures and challenges that few people speak about honestly. You will be given the map for staying stable while interacting with instability, remaining centered while surrounded by chaos, holding the higher frequencies while respecting where others are without trying to force them to change. Before you watch the next video, there is one last declaration to be made. In the comments, write this one word: integrated. By writing this word, you are making a quantum commitment. You are declaring to the field that you are not just experiencing a temporary state shift, but are permanently integrating it into your system. You are asserting that you understand this is not about peak experiences, but about stabilizing at the peak as your new baseline. One word that signals to your entire system: this is permanent, this is real, this is who I am now. Do it now. Write integrated in the comments, and as you write it, feel what happens in your awareness. There is a deepening, isn't there? A settling, a feeling of something locking into place. That is your consciousness recognizing the commitment and beginning the full process of integration at every level of your being. And then, subscribe to this channel immediately. Hit the notification bell, because what is coming in the advanced videos will take you deeper into living the higher state than most people ever explore. Sustainable witness consciousness, embodied awakening in everyday life, navigating relationships from the higher states, and maintaining coherence in chaotic conditions will all be explored. This is not spiritual entertainment. This is not consciousness theory for intellectual stimulation. This is the practical guide for permanently living at the frequencies most people only touch episodically. Look at the videos appearing on your screen now. Each represents a different aspect of integration and higher state maintenance. The one that pulls your attention the strongest is not random or a coincidence. It is your consciousness telling you what piece you need next for full stabilization. Trust that pull. It is your higher state guiding itself to full integration. But understand this clearly. You are not collecting information for intellectual knowledge. You are undergoing a transformation at the deepest levels of your being. Every video you watch from this new state, every practice you apply, every insight you integrate, you are literally rewiring your brain, recalibrating your nervous system, restructuring your identity around your quantum nature, not your conditioned personality. The you who started this video is permanently changed by what you have come to know. Not because someone did something to you, but because the recognition itself is transformative. You have seen what cannot be unseen. You have remembered what cannot be unforgotten. You have crossed a threshold that cannot be uncrossed. Your quantum state has shifted. And that shift is permanent if you choose to make it so through consistent recognition and integration. And this transformation accelerates exponentially from here. The more you function from your higher state, the more natural it becomes. The more you recognize yourself as consciousness and not form, the less you identify with temporary forms. The more you stabilize at the elevated frequencies, the more reality responds, organizing itself to match those frequencies. Think of this like learning to ride a bicycle. At first, it requires intense focus and conscious effort. You are constantly correcting, constantly adjusting, constantly working to maintain balance. But with practice, it becomes automatic. You stop thinking about balance and just ride. Eventually, you cannot even explain how you do it. The knowing has become embodied. You just do it naturally without thought. Stabilization in the higher quantum states follows that same trajectory. Right now, it requires conscious recognition and intentional realignment. But with consistent practice during the integration window, it becomes automatic. You cease working to maintain the state and simply naturally function from it. And eventually, it becomes so natural that you cannot remember what it was like to function from the lower states. It feels like an ancient story, like a dream you woke up from and can barely recall. This is the journey we are on together. This is the transformation this channel supports and facilitates. This is the stabilization that becomes possible when you fully commit to integrating, not just experiencing your quantum state shift. So, make your declaration, write integrated in the comments, subscribe to the channel, choose your next video, and step fully into the integration process that will make your higher state permanent, stable, effortless, and unshakable. Because you have crossed the threshold, you have shifted frequencies, you have entered a higher quantum reality. The only question now is, will you stabilize here permanently, or will you lapse back to the lower frequencies through unconscious forgetting? The old paradigm is episodic peak experiences separated by long periods of ordinary consciousness. The new paradigm is sustained higher state awareness as your permanent baseline with rare dips that you quickly recognize and correct. Welcome to your new quantum reality. Welcome to higher frequency consciousness. Welcome to the recognition of who you have always been but temporarily forgot. The shift has happened. The integration begins now. The question is, are you ready to make it permanent? And now that you understand you have crossed that threshold, there is one more thing you need to know. Because most people do not realize that once you recognize yourself as consciousness itself, there is a final phase that completes the transformation. The moment when you stop observing the field and realize you are the field. That complete shift reveals what happens when witness consciousness dissolves into pure being, and how that recognition changes everything about manifestation, presence, and living as reality itself, not in reality.